goal number 2 is to put a little timer in here that is an alarm that will alert me to when I need to shut down shop, because it always stops recording. So, okay, Rebecca Roanhorse, using identity, whether, sincere identity or whether or not, but using, we all books are marketed, and all books have stories that are outside of the actual work itself. You've got to have some kind of an angle to make your author visible in a busy marketplace. And Rebecca Roanhorse's story was, hey, I'm a Native person. Here is this book. And it's like using that identity to kind of stick out, where there's a ton of other authors who have, different stories, some of them more compelling than others. And just like, being smarter about like how much we are going to take that as take that for granted. Being smarter about how I want to be smarter about how I come to books. I mean, you always come to books with something. There's got to be some reason you're going to pick up one book over another book. There are so many books. But it's funny because like one reaction to this story could be like, well, Rebecca Roanhorse is not an authentic voice from this community. I should go and find other voices that are actually from this community and stuff like that. Is that going to make that person automatically a better writer than Rebecca Roanhorse? It will maybe put them in a more of they'll have more experience, more lived thing. They will be more aware of, how to be respectful to that society. But do I want that in a author? I don't know. I think you should probably go. I mean, I'd really try and come from, especially when I'm reading like an urban fantasy apocalyptic story. I'm like, this for me is just another urban fantasy with a color put in of it being from a native perspective in a native world. I mean, I guess there is probably a hope there that maybe I'm going to learn a little bit. I'm gonna expand a little bit of my conception of the world, which maybe makes it disappointing that with someone like Rebecca Roanhorse, maybe she's just somebody who has done her research and is bringing that to me, versus someone who's bringing their personal experience and inner life to it and bringing it to me. Which isn't to dismiss Rebecca Roanhorse's kind of inner life and how she has lived and where she is at, but that's a different story. But it's one of those tricky things. I mean, when people protest about kind of identity being so important about the author, they're probably protesting against stuff like this, where it's like, okay, is it the writing we care about, or that Rebecca Roanhorse is puts herself forward as a native person, and like what constitutes a native person, because there's genetics, like, she's apparently does have the genetics of having a mother who was native or part native. So she's got that, but she also hadn't maybe grown up in this society, hasn't lived the experience of that. She lived very much somewhere else and grew up that way. So we're not getting what the bill of goods sold us. And maybe we're just suckers for believing the hype and the thing before. I mean, unfortunately, there is a long tradition in Canadian literature of stuff like Grey Owl, who was a British man who put himself forward as a native throughout his life, as a representative of native life, and speaking on the environment and stuff like that. But it was all bullshit. And but that was what mainstream dominant culture latched onto, was Grey Owl and all his words of wisdom and stuff like that, versus the genuine native people who at that point were really suffering, and nobody fucking listened to, because Grey Owl knew what to market to white people, white dominant society in Canada, and the world. He was like world famous, and the world. So always think about Grey Owl when you pick up somebody who purports to speak. And I mean, then there's also that of like speaking for a community. I mean, in some ways that's kind of inevitable, it seems, for anybody who's like, oh, notable, like, hey, here's a new voice from a community. People have a tendency to conflate that one voice with the entire community, which maybe comes from only reading one author in a community versus saying, oh, that's one viewpoint from that community, but there's multiple different ideas of what it is to be a native, what is to be native here. There's multiple voices there, and that for all communities, like, Black people, for Canadians, for white Canadians, but in dominant mainstream Canadian society, too oftentimes the white voice is taken as the set voice. So we can have all these different kind of debates and argues, and right, left, socially conservative, socially radical. We can have all this differing stuff. It's a rich, vibrant thing. But when we get it from one small suppressed, maybe just by numbers, just tiny community, we don't listen to. We latch onto one and we just make a blanket statement, and that's all we have. That's all the time that we are willing to give to that community. So yeah. I enjoyed her Trail of Lightning. I always want to say Trail of Lightning, and I enjoyed Dark Sun, which is set in pre-Columbian the Americas, pre-contact America. A fantasy version of that. I mean, in both of these cases, she's written fantasy books. It's maybe unfortunate that she's put herself forward as such a specific voice from a community. You wonder how much of that is her just kind of her own hustle. How much of that is the marketing thing going, okay, how can we sell this author? How can we sell this? Oh, she's got like Native heritage. It's like, that was an unfortunate choice, because it'll be interesting to see, stripped of that, maybe tarred a little bit with kind of cultural appropriation, whether that drives off a lot of readers from her work. It may severely boomerang on her. It's the double-edged sword of, I have a good story, but you better have that story really straight, or else folks are going to come for you, and maybe rightfully so. I think people from this particular Navajo tribe probably have legitimate complaints, which I don't know if she has actually addressed properly, without just sort of minimizing it as just saying, oh, it's some voices in the community of being grouchy about me. I would have to look into it more. I'm going to stop here because my alarm did go off, and I've gone 8 minutes beyond that, which is what I do. Okay, more videos later.